The collision. The morning sun cast golden rays through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Ashford mansion, illuminating the marble floors that gleamed like mirrors. Elena Rodriguez pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, her worn sneakers making soft squeaking sounds against the polished surface. She'd been working at the Ashford estate for exactly 3 weeks, and every day felt like walking through a museum where she didn't belong. At 24, Elena had learned to make herself invisible. It was a survival skill she'd perfected over years of working for Manhattan's elite. Keep your head down, do your job, collect your paycheck, and go home to your tiny apartment in Queens where real life happened. Where her younger sister Maria was studying for her nursing exams, where her mother's medical bills piled up on the kitchen counter, where every dollar mattered. She was scrubbing the brass doorknob of the library when she heard it, the roar of an expensive engine followed by tires screeching on the circular driveway. Through the window, she watched a sleek black Porsche come to an abrupt stop, parked at a careless angle that blocked the entire entrance. The driver's doors swung open, and out stepped Alexander Ashford III, the golden boy of New York society. At 26, he had everything: looks, money, education, and an ego the size of Manhattan itself. His designer suit probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. His dark hair was artfully tousled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and his blue eyes held the kind of arrogance that came from never hearing the word no. Elena watched him toss his car keys to the valet without even looking at the man, already barking orders into his phone. She'd seen him around the mansion before, always surrounded by an entourage, always acting like he owned the world, which, technically, he kind of did. She returned to her work, determined to stay out of his way. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. 20 minutes later, Elena was carrying a tray of fresh linens up the main staircase when Alexander came bounding down, still on his phone, completely oblivious to his surroundings. "I don't care what the investors say, Thompson. We're not selling. Tell them if they don't like it, they can." The collision happened in slow motion. Alexander's shoulder slammed into Elena's arm. The tray flew from her hands. White sheets billowed through the air like clouds before tumbling down the marble stairs. A crystal vase that had been on the tray, one that had been sitting on a hallway table, needing to be moved for cleaning, shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. Elena stumbled backward, her hand gripping the banister to keep from falling. Alexander barely moved, his phone still pressed to his ear. "Hold on, Thompson." He lowered the phone and looked at Elena for the first time, his eyes raking over her uniform with barely concealed disdain. "Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea how much that vase cost?" Elena's heart pounded. She knew that vase. 18th century Venetian glass. Priceless. And completely not her fault. "I'm sorry, sir, but you walked into me." "Excuse me?" Alexander's voice rose, his face flushing with anger. "I walked into you? You're the one who wasn't watching where you were going." "I was carrying a tray up the stairs." "You were on your phone, not paying attention." "Do you know who I am?" He took a step closer, looming over her. "I could have you fired for this. Do you understand that? One word to my father, and you're done." Elena felt something crack inside her. 3 weeks of biting her tongue, of swallowing her pride, of being treated like she was invisible or, worse, less than human. 3 weeks of watching entitled rich people waste more money on a single dinner party than her mother's hospital bills. 3 weeks of exhaustion, stress, and barely holding her life together. She looked up at Alexander Ashford III, this spoiled man-child who'd probably never worked a real day in his life, who thought his money made him better than everyone else, who couldn't even apologize for something that was clearly his fault. And she snapped. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, Mr. Ashford." Her voice was steady, cold, and loud enough to echo through the foyer. "You're the guy who parks his car wherever he wants because he thinks rules don't apply to him. You're the guy who treats people like they're furniture. No, worse than furniture, because at least furniture gets handled with care. You're the guy who's so busy pretending to be important that you can't see anyone else exists." Alexander's mouth fell open. Nobody talked to him like this. Nobody. "How dare you?" "I'm not finished." Elena stepped forward, her dark eyes blazing. "You want to fire me? Fine. Go ahead. But before you do, let me make something crystal clear. That vase. You broke it. Not me. You weren't watching where you were going because you were too busy yelling at someone on your phone, probably about something that doesn't even matter. And instead of apologizing like a decent human being, you're threatening to take away my job. The job I need to pay for my mother's cancer treatments and my sister's education. The color drained from Alexander's face. But here's what really gets me. Elena continued, her voice shaking now with emotion. You think money makes you better than me. You think because you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you're somehow superior. But you know what? I work harder in one day than you probably have in your entire privileged life. I see more. I feel more. I matter more than you ever will. Because at least I know the value of things. Real things. Not just price tags and status symbols. The mansion had gone completely silent. Staff members had appeared in doorways, frozen in shock. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, stood at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide. Elena grabbed her cart, her hands trembling. I'll clean up the vase. I'll pay for it, even though it'll take me years. And then I'll pack my things. She turned to walk away, but Alexander's voice stopped her. Wait. She turned back, expecting fury. Instead, she saw something she'd never seen before on Alexander Ashford's face, uncertainty. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. You're right. The words seemed to cost him something. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides. I wasn't watching where I was going. I broke the vase. And he paused, the word clearly foreign to him. I apologize. Elena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. And you're not fired, he added quickly, glancing at Mrs. Chen. Nobody is fired. I'll talk to my father about the vase. Before Elena could respond, he turned and strode away, disappearing down the corridor that led to his private wing of the mansion. But not before she caught a glimpse of something in his expression, shame, perhaps, or the first crack in his armor of arrogance. Mrs. Chen hurried down the stairs, already directing other staff members to clean up the broken glass. She placed a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever seen. The older woman said softly. Possibly both. I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize for speaking the truth, child. Though I suggest you avoid Mr. Alexander for the next few days. Let things settle. But avoiding Alexander Ashford, Elena would soon discover, was about to become impossible. The arrangement. 3 days passed. 3 days during which Elena cleaned every room in the mansion except those in Alexander's wing. 3 days during which she saw him only from a distance, a flash of expensive suit disappearing around a corner, the sound of his voice from behind closed doors. On the 4th day, everything changed. Elena was in the East Garden, helping the groundskeeper trim the rose bushes that Mrs. Ashford Sr. insisted on maintaining herself, when Mrs. Chen appeared at the garden gate. Elena, Mr. Ashford wants to see you in his office. Elena's stomach dropped. Which Mr. Ashford? Alexander. The walk to his office felt like a death march. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. He'd changed his mind about firing her. His father had insisted. They were going to make her pay for the vase immediately, money she didn't have. She knocked on the heavy oak door, her hand shaking slightly. Come in. Alexander's office was exactly what she'd expected, all dark wood, leather furniture, and walls lined with books that probably cost more than cars. He sat behind a massive desk, typing on a laptop. When she entered, he closed it and stood. Sit down, please. It wasn't a request. Elena perched on the edge of one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Alexander remained standing, pacing to the window that overlooked the estate. For a long moment, he said nothing, and Elena watched his profile, trying to read his expression. I've been thinking about what you said. He finally spoke, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. About me. About how I treat people. Elena held her breath. He turned to face her. You were right. About all of it. And that, he paused, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed almost vulnerable. That's not easy for me to admit. Mr. Ashford. Alexander. Please. He moved back to his desk, but didn't sit, instead leaning against it. I want to explain something. Not as an excuse, but maybe so you'll understand. Elena waited. I was raised to believe that success meant dominance, that showing weakness was failure. My father, his jaw tightened. My father built an empire from nothing, and he made sure I understood that the Ashford name comes with expectations. I had to be the best, had to be ruthless, had to never let anyone see me as anything less than perfect. That sounds exhausting, Elena said softly. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. It is. but it's also all I've ever known. Until you called me out on it. Until you made me see myself through someone else's eyes. He paused. I didn't like what I saw. Elena felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't the arrogant rich boy from the staircase. This was someone real, someone struggling with the weight of expectations she could only imagine. Why am I here, Alexander? He took a deep breath. Because I have a proposition for you. And before you say anything, hear me out completely. Elena tensed. Nothing good ever started with, I have a proposition. My grandmother is coming to visit, he began. She's 84, sharp as a tack, and the only person in this family whose opinion I actually care about. She's also been on my case for years about finding someone real, someone who isn't part of our social circle, someone who can see past the money and the name. Okay. Last month, in a moment of weakness after she'd been particularly persistent, I told her I'd met someone special. I described a woman who was smart, independent, hardworking, and didn't take any of my nonsense. Elena's eyes widened. You described me? Well, I didn't know I was describing you at the time. I was making someone up. But then I met you, and he shrugged helplessly. You're exactly who I told her I'd found. So you want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Elena said flatly. Yes. Are you insane? Probably. He pushed off from the desk, starting to pace again. Look, I know how this sounds. I know it's crazy. But my grandmother is coming for 2 weeks, and she expects to meet this woman I've been telling her about. If she finds out I lied, she'll be disappointed in you, Elena finished. Welcome to the real world, where actions have consequences. Alexander winced. Fair. But here's the thing, my grandmother isn't just visiting. She's coming to make a decision about the family trust. She controls the majority of the Ashford fortune, and she's been threatening to divide it among charities if she doesn't think the next generation deserves it. And you think pretending to have a girlfriend will convince her you deserve millions of dollars? It's not about the money, he said sharply, then caught himself. Okay, it's partly about the money, but it's more about the company. Ashford Industries employs 15,000 people. If the trust gets divided, if the company gets broken up and sold, those people lose their jobs, their livelihoods. Elena studied him carefully. He seemed genuine, but she'd also seen him act before, charm investors, manipulate situations. How could she trust anything he said? What's in it for me? She asked. I'll pay you $50,000 for 2 weeks of work. Elena's breath caught. $50,000. That was more than she made in 2 years. That was her mother's medical bills, Maria's tuition, maybe even a down payment on an apartment where they wouldn't have to listen to the neighbors through paper-thin walls. But it was also insane. Dangerous. A lie that could blow up in both their faces. I can't, she whispered. I can't lie to your grandmother. And I definitely can't pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm not asking you to pretend to be someone else, Alexander said urgently, moving closer. That's the point. My grandmother wants me to be with someone real. Someone honest. Someone exactly like you. Except for the part where our entire relationship is a lie. He had the grace to look ashamed. Except for that, yes. Elena stood, shaking her head. I'm sorry, but no. This is crazy. Find someone else. She was halfway to the door when he spoke again. 100,000. She froze, her hand on the doorknob. $100,000, Alexander repeated. Plus, I'll clear your mother's medical debt. All of it. I'll pay for your sister's entire education. And I'll set up a trust fund that'll give you financial security for life. Elena's mind spun. That kind of money could change everything. Everything. Her mother could get the experimental treatment her doctors recommended. Maria could go to the best nursing school. They could have a real home. But at what cost? She turned slowly. Why? Why me specifically? Why not hire an actress or one of your society friends? Because my grandmother would see through them in a heartbeat. But you, he spread his hands. You already think I'm a spoiled brat. You've already put me in my place. You're the only person who's been genuinely real with me in years. That's what she wants to see. That's what I need. This is emotional manipulation, Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. It's a business transaction, Alexander counted. 2 weeks. You help me keep my grandmother happy, save 15,000 jobs, and secure your family's future. You can walk away afterward and never see me again. Elena's thoughts turned to her mother, weak and tired after chemotherapy. To Maria, studying late into the night, worried about student loans. To their cramped apartment where the heat barely worked in winter. I need to think about it, she said. Fair enough. But Elena? She looked back at him. For what it's worth, I am sorry. About everything. About how I've treated you. About putting you in this position. You deserve better. She left his office with her head spinning, not knowing what she was going to do. The deal. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in her tiny bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to Maria's soft breathing from the bed they shared. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Rodriguez in the living room, trying to muffle her coughs. $100,000. Elena had never had more than a few $100s in her bank account at once. The idea of that much money felt almost obscene. She thought about all the things it could do, all the problems it could solve, all the weight it could lift from her shoulders. But she also thought about the lie, about pretending to be in love with a man she barely knew, a man who represented everything she'd learned to resent about the wealthy elite, about deceiving an old woman who, by Alexander's account, seemed like one of the few decent members of his family. At 5 in the morning, Elena gave up on sleep. She made coffee in their tiny kitchen, careful not to wake Maria, and sat by the window watching the city wake up. Queens looked different from Manhattan. Less polished, more real. This was where people lived actual lives, struggled through actual problems. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know you haven't decided yet, but your mother has a doctor's appointment at Memorial Sloan Kettering at 9 a.m. I've taken the liberty of arranging for Dr. Harrison, the head of oncology, to review her case. No obligation. Just wanted to help. Elena stared at the message, emotions warring inside her. It was manipulative. It was also incredibly kind. Or was kindness just another form of manipulation when it came from someone like Alexander Ashford? At 8:30, Elena took her mother to the hospital. Mrs. Rodriguez was skeptical. I don't understand, Mija. I already have a doctor. Why do I need to see someone new? Just a second opinion, Mama. It's free. That was a lie. The first of many, Elena thought bitterly. Dr. Harrison was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who spent 2 hours reviewing Mrs. Rodriguez's case. When she finished, she smiled. Mrs. Rodriguez, I think we have some options we can explore. There's a new immunotherapy protocol that's showing remarkable results for your type of cancer. I'd like to enroll you in the trial. How much will it cost? Mrs. Rodriguez asked immediately, ever practical. The trial covers all costs. You'd actually be doing us a favor by participating. Elena knew that wasn't entirely true. Knew that Alexander had somehow arranged this, paid for it, made it happen. She should have been angry at the manipulation. Instead, she felt tears pricking her eyes as she watched hope bloom on her mother's face for the first time in months. After the appointment, Elena texted Alexander. We need to talk. Tonight. He responded immediately. My place. 7 p.m. I'll send a car. I'll cook dinner for us, Elena told her mother and sister that evening. But I have to go out for a few hours first. Work thing. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. The car that picked her up was a sleek black town car, nothing flashy. The driver was polite and silent. Elena watched the city change as they drove from Queens into Manhattan, the buildings growing taller, the streets cleaner, the people better dressed. The Ashford mansion looked different at night, lit up like something from a fairy tale. Elena felt profoundly out of place as she walked up the front steps in her best jeans and a clean blouse. Alexander met her at the door himself, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. It was the first time she'd seen him in anything other than a suit, and it made him look younger, more approachable. Thank you for coming, he said, gesturing her inside. I thought we could talk in the library. More private. The library was a beautiful room, 2 stories tall, with a spiral staircase leading to a balcony lined with books. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and comfortable chairs were arranged near it. It felt warm, lived in, unlike the rest of the mansion's museum-like perfection. Thank you, Elena said as she sat down. For my mother. For Dr. Harrison. I shouldn't have done that without asking, Alexander said, taking the chair across from her. It was manipulative, but I wanted you to see that I'm serious about this. About helping your family. Serious about getting what you want, you mean. He nodded slowly. Both can be true. Elena took a deep breath. I have conditions. If I'm going to do this, and I'm not saying I am yet, but if I do, we do it my way. I'm listening. First, no touching unless absolutely necessary. This is pretend, and I need boundaries. Agreed. Second, I want everything in writing. The payment, the medical bills, the trust fund. All legally documented before we start. My lawyer will have the contracts ready tomorrow. Third, I want to know the plan. Every detail. Who I'm supposed to be, what our story is, how we met. I'm not going into this blind. Alexander leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Elena, I need you to understand something. My grandmother is incredibly perceptive. If we go in with a rigid script, she'll see through it. We need to be flexible, natural. We need to build a real friendship, Elena finished. You want me to actually get to know you, so when your grandmother asks about our relationship, I can answer honestly. Exactly. He paused. Is that acceptable? Elena thought about it. It made sense, but it also complicated things. Getting to know Alexander meant potentially seeing him as human, as someone more than just a spoiled rich boy. That could make everything harder, but it could also make the lie more convincing. Okay, she said finally, but on my terms. We spend time together, you tell me about your life. I tell you about mine. But the moment this starts to feel like more than a business arrangement, we pull back. Understood. Understood. They shook hands, and Elena felt the warmth of his palm against hers. Despite everything, despite her anger and resentment and fear, she felt a small spark of something she couldn't quite name. She pulled her hand away quickly. When does your grandmother arrive? She asked. In 1 week. Then we better get started. Getting to know you. Over the next 7 days, Elena lived a double life. By day, she continued her work at the mansion, scrubbing floors and changing linens, keeping up appearances. By night, she met with Alexander, learning how to navigate his world. Their first date was dinner at an expensive restaurant in Manhattan. Elena felt utterly out of place in the borrowed dress Mrs. Chen had helped her find, surrounded by people in designer clothes having conversations about vacation homes and stock portfolios. You're nervous, Alexander observed, watching her fidget with her napkin. I don't belong here, Elena admitted. Everyone's staring. They're staring because you're beautiful, and because you're with me, which makes you interesting. Elena rolled her eyes. Your ego really is impressive. But he was right about the stares. She could feel them, assessing, judging. She straightened her spine, refusing to shrink. Tell me about your family, Alexander said, changing the subject. Your grandmother's going to ask. So Elena talked. She told him about her mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to support them after her father died. About Maria, who was brilliant and kind and wanted to be a nurse because she'd been inspired by the people who'd cared for their father in his final days. About growing up in Queens, learning to stretch every dollar, understanding that nothing in life came easy. Alexander listened with an intensity that surprised her. He asked questions, real questions, like he genuinely cared about the answers. What about you? Elena asked when the waiter had cleared their plates. Tell me about the real Alexander Ashford, not the public persona. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if I know who that is anymore. Try. He sighed, staring into his wine glass. I wanted to be an architect. Did you know that? When I was a kid, I used to spend hours building things with Legos, designing imaginary buildings. I applied to architecture school, got accepted to Columbia's program. What happened? My father happened. Told me Ashfords didn't waste their time on frivolous pursuits. I was expected to study business, join the company, continue the legacy. He smiled bitterly. So that's what I did. Do you regret it? Every day. But I'm also good at what I do. The company's thriving under my management. I made my father proud, finally. The way he said it made Elena think that his father's pride had come at a significant cost. Their second meeting was at a museum. Alexander had arranged for a private tour of the modern art wing, and Elena found herself genuinely enjoying his company as he explained the significance of various pieces. He was knowledgeable, passionate even, and she saw glimpses of the person he might have been if he'd been allowed to follow his dreams. You really love this, she said, watching him study a particularly abstract sculpture. Art is honest, he replied. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. It just exists, and you either connect with it or you don't. Is that why you like it? Because it's the opposite of your life? He looked at her sharply, then laughed, a real laugh, not the polished chuckle she'd heard him use at social events. You see right through me, don't you? It's not that hard. You're not as complicated as you think. Oh, really? And what do you see? Elena considered him carefully. I see someone who spent his whole life trying to be what everyone else wanted. Someone who's lonely, even in a crowd. Someone who's scared that if he lets people see the real him, they'll be disappointed. The vulnerability that flashed across Alexander's face made her chest tighten. Your turn, he said quietly. What are you afraid of? Failing, Elena answered immediately. Not being enough. Letting down the people who depend on me. Is that why you took this deal? Because you're afraid of failing your family? Partly. But also because, she paused, surprised by her own honesty. Because I want better for them. And I'm tired of just surviving. I want to actually live. Something shifted between them in that moment. A recognition, perhaps, of shared fears and secret hopes. They were more alike than Elena had wanted to admit. By the fourth day, they'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Alexander picked her up after her shift at the mansion in a regular car, not the flashy Porsche, and they'd drive around the city, talking about everything and nothing. He showed her his favorite places, the hidden spots the tourists never found. She took him to her neighborhood, to the taco truck that served the best food in Queens, to the park where she and Maria used to play as kids. It's so different here, Alexander said, sitting on a bench and watching kids play basketball on a cracked court. It feels more real. It is real, Elena said. This is how most people live, Alexander. Not in mansions. Not with private drivers and trust funds. I know. I mean, intellectually, I've always known that. But knowing and understanding are different things. On the fifth day, Alexander took Elena shopping. She protested, but he insisted. My grandmother will expect you to look a certain way, he explained as they entered a boutique that definitely didn't have prices on the tags. Not because she's shallow, but because she'll wonder why I haven't bought you nice things if we're supposedly together. The saleswoman looked at Elena with barely concealed disdain, taking in her practical clothes and lack of designer labels. But when Alexander introduced Elena as his girlfriend, the woman's demeanor changed instantly. Elena hated every minute of it. Hated being judged by her appearance. Hated the pretense. Hated how easy it was for money to change how people treated you. But she had to admit, when she looked at herself in the mirror wearing a designer dress that actually fit properly, that moved with her body like water, she felt different. Not better, necessarily, but more confident. You look beautiful, Alexander said softly from behind her. Their eyes met in the mirror, and for a moment, Elena forgot to breathe. It's just a dress, she managed. I'm not talking about the dress. Elena turned away, uncomfortable with the intensity in his gaze. We should stick to the plan, Alexander. This is business, remember? Right, business. But he didn't sound convinced. On the sixth day, they had their first argument. They were at his penthouse apartment, different from the family mansion, and Elena was looking at the photographs on his walls. Most were professional shots of Alexander at various events, shaking hands with important people, smiling his practiced smile. Don't you have any real pictures? She asked. Of friends, family moments that mattered? These did matter. Each of these events was important for business. That's sad. Excuse me? It's sad that you don't have any pictures of yourself just being happy. Just living. She gestured around the immaculate apartment. This whole place feels like a showroom. Where do you actually live, Alexander? Where's the mess, the personality, the proof that a human being exists here? Not everyone lives in chaos, Elena. There's a difference between chaos and character. Your apartment has all the warmth of a hotel room. Well, I apologize that my home doesn't meet your standards, he said coldly, his walls going up. See, this is what you do. The moment someone gets close to something real, you shut down. You hide behind sarcasm and superiority. And you hide behind judgment, Alexander shot back. You've decided who I am based on my bank account. You think you know me, but you're just as prejudiced as the people in that restaurant who stared at you. The words hit Elena like a slap. That's not fair, isn't it? You spent this whole week waiting for me to prove I'm the spoiled brat you think I am. Looking for evidence that rich people can't have real feelings or real problems. Your problems are not the same as mine, Alexander. I never said they were. But they're still real. Being lonely is real. Feeling trapped in a life you didn't choose is real. Wanting more than what you have is real, whether you're in a mansion or a tiny apartment. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, emotions running high. I'm sorry, Elena said finally. You're right. I have been judging you. It's easier than admitting that you might actually be a good person. Why is that easier? Because if you're a good person, then this gets complicated. Then I might actually start to care. And that wasn't part of the deal. Alexander moved closer, and Elena's heart started to race. Maybe it should be, he said softly. Don't, Elena whispered. Please don't. Don't what? Don't care about you. I think it's too late for that. We have one more day before your grandmother arrives. One more day to get our story straight and remember that this is all pretend. So please, can we just stick to the plan? Alexander stepped back, running his hand through his hair in frustration. Fine. What do you want to know about my grandmother? They spent the rest of the evening going over details. Eleanor Ashford was a formidable woman who'd married into money but never forgot her working-class roots. She valued honesty above all else, despised pretense, and had a gift for seeing through lies. She'd been widowed for 20 years and spent her time traveling and managing charitable foundations. She sounds amazing, Elena said. She is, which is why lying to her feels so wrong. We could tell her the truth, Elena suggested. Explain the situation. She'd never go along with it. She'd probably cut me off just for trying to manipulate her. He sighed. No, we're committed now. We just have to make it convincing. That night, as the car drove Elena back to Queens, she stared out the window and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. In 1 week, Alexander Ashford had gone from being the enemy to being someone she actually liked, maybe even respected. The lines between real and pretend were blurring, and that terrified her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. Thank you for pushing me, for seeing me, for being real. Tomorrow is going to be challenging, but I'm glad I don't have to face it alone. Elena typed and deleted several responses before settling on. We've got this. Partners? Partners, he confirmed. Elena fell asleep that night wondering if they were making the biggest mistake of their lives, or if something real was being born from their web of lies. The arrival. Eleanor Ashford arrived at noon on a Tuesday, emerging from a car with the bearing of a queen despite her 84 years. She was tall, silver-haired, and possessed eyes that seemed to see everything. Elena, watching from a second-floor window, felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Ready? Alexander appeared beside her, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. No, but let's do this anyway. They'd agreed on a story. They'd met when Elena was working at the mansion, had a confrontational first encounter, and gradually fell for each other over the past few months. It was close enough to the truth to feel believable, even if it left out the crucial detail that their relationship was entirely fake. Alexander took Elena's hand as they descended the main staircase. His palm was sweaty. You're nervous, Elena whispered. Terrified. You? Same. Eleanor was in the main parlor, already holding court with Alexander's parents. Richard Ashford, Alexander's father, was a cold man in his 60s who looked at Elena like she was an unexpected stain on his expensive rug. Catherine Ashford, Alexander's mother, offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. But Eleanor's face lit up when Alexander entered with Elena. There's my favorite grandson. Eleanor embraced Alexander, then turned to Elena with warm curiosity. And you must be the young woman I've been hearing so much about. I'm Eleanor. Elena Rodriguez, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you. Please call me Eleanor. Or Gran, if you're comfortable. Anyone who makes Alexander smile like that is family as far as I'm concerned. She studied Elena carefully. You're even more beautiful than he described. And I can see the intelligence in your eyes. Good. My grandson needs someone who can keep him on his toes. Gran, Alexander protested, but he was smiling. It's true. You've coasted through life on charm and good looks for too long. It's about time someone challenged you. Eleanor linked her arm through Elena's. Come, my dear. Let's have tea, and you can tell me all about yourself. Alexander, your parents and I have business to discuss first. Elena shot Alexander a panicked look, but he just shrugged helplessly. She was on her own. Eleanor led her to a sunroom overlooking the gardens, where tea had already been prepared. As they settled into comfortable chairs, Elena felt the weight of the older woman's attention. So, Eleanor began pouring tea with steady hands. Tell me how you really met my grandson. And please, don't give me whatever sanitized story he's prepared. I want the truth. Elena's throat went dry. This was it, the moment that would make or break everything. She decided to stick as close to the truth as possible. I'm a maid here at the mansion. We met when he ran into me on the stairs. He was on his phone, not paying attention. I was carrying a tray. We collided, a valuable vase broke, and he tried to blame me for it. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. Did he now? And what did you do? I told him off. Completely. Said things that probably should have gotten me fired. To Eleanor's surprise, Eleanor laughed, a rich, delighted sound. Oh, I would have paid to see that. What did he do? He was shocked. I don't think anyone had talked to him like that before. But then, Elena softened, remembering. Then he surprised me. He apologized. Said I was right. And he's been working to prove it ever since. That sounds like my Alexander. Underneath all that Ashford arrogance, there's a decent person trying to get out. Eleanor sipped her tea thoughtfully. Tell me, Elena, what do you see when you look at my grandson? The question caught Elena off guard. She thought about the past week, about the man she'd come to know beyond the privilege and the attitude. I see someone who's trying to figure out who he really is, Elena said honestly. Someone who's been playing a role for so long that he's forgotten there are other options. Someone who's lonely but doesn't know how to let people in. Eleanor's eyes glistened. You do see him, don't you? Really see him. I try to. And does he see you? Your dreams, your fears, your true self. Elena thought about their conversations, the way Alexander listened, the questions he asked. Yes, he does. It wasn't a lie, she realized with a start. Whatever else was false about their arrangement, that part was true. Good. Eleanor set down her teacup. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to keep it between us for now. Can you do that? Of course. I didn't come here just to visit. I came to make a decision about my estate. Alexander's father thinks it should all go to the company, to maintaining the Ashford empire. But I've spent my life watching what that empire does to people. It turned my husband into someone I barely recognized. It's turning Alexander's father into a bitter, controlling manual. And Alexander? Elena asked quietly. That's what I'm here to find out. If he's just another Ashford male, destined to put power and money above everything else, then I'm dividing my fortune among various charities. Let him succeed or fail based on his own merits. But if he's different, then perhaps there's hope. Perhaps the Ashford legacy can be something more than just accumulating wealth. Eleanor reached across and took Elena's hand. You're part of that equation, my dear. The company he keeps says a great deal about a man. The fact that he chose you, someone real, someone from outside his bubble, that tells me something important. Guilt twisted in Elena's stomach. Eleanor, Don't. The older woman squeezed her hand. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Just be yourself. That's all I ask. Can you do that? I can try. That's all any of us can do. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Eleanor wanted to know everything about Elena's life, her family, her work, her dreams. And somehow, with this woman who should have been intimidating, Elena found herself opening up. She told Eleanor about her mother's cancer, about Maria's ambitions, about growing up with very little, but feeling rich in the things that mattered. She talked about her dream of maybe going back to school someday, of becoming a teacher, of making a difference in kids' lives the way some of her teachers had made a difference in hers. You will, Eleanor said with conviction. You have that fire in you. I can see it. When Alexander finally appeared to collect Elena for dinner, Eleanor shooed them away. No. Spend time together. I'm having dinner with Richard and Catherine tonight to discuss business. But tomorrow, I want all of us to have family dinner together. And Elena, dear, bring your mother and sister. I'd love to meet them. Elena's heart stopped. Oh, I don't think. I insist. Family is important, and if you're important to Alexander, then they're important to me. After they'd left the sunroom, Alexander pulled Elena aside. How did it go? He asked anxiously. She wants to meet my family. That's good, right? She likes you. Alexander, this is getting complicated. My mother, my sister, they don't know any of this is fake. They think I'm actually dating you. What did you tell them? That I met someone. That he treats me well. That he's been helping with medical bills. Elena rubbed her temples. I've been lying to everyone, and I hate it. We can still pull out. Tell my grandmother the truth. And cost you everything? Cost all those employees their jobs. Elena shook her head. No. We're in this now. But Alexander, when this is over, when your grandmother makes her decision and leaves, we end it, he finished. I know. That was always the plan. So why did the thought of that feel like a punch to the gut? Family dinner. Elena had never been more nervous in her life. She stood in her tiny apartment, trying to explain to her mother and sister why they were going to have dinner at the Ashford mansion. The Ashfords, Maria repeated, her eyes wide. As in, the people who own half of Manhattan? Alexander wants you to meet his grandmother, Elena said, adjusting Maria's collar for the third time. Mrs. Rodriguez, looking healthier than she had in months thanks to the new treatment, studied her daughter carefully. Mija, this is serious. With this boy, Elena thought about all the conversations, all the moments, all the times Alexander had made her laugh or think or feel seen. Yes, Mama. It's serious. It wasn't entirely a lie. What they had was real, even if the framework was false. The car Alexander sent was big enough to accommodate all three of them comfortably. As they drove from Queens to the mansion, Elena watched her mother and sister take in the changing landscape, their expressions a mix of awe and discomfort. Elena, Maria whispered, are we really supposed to be here? Yes. We absolutely are. Alexander met them at the door, and Elena had to admit he'd cleaned up well. He wore a simple button-down and slacks, nothing too formal, clearly trying to make her family comfortable. When he greeted Mrs. Rodriguez in Spanish, halting and awkward, but he was trying, Elena felt something warm bloom in her chest. Thank you for coming, he said sincerely. My grandmother's been looking forward to meeting you all day. Eleanor was in the dining room, and she embraced Mrs. Rodriguez like an old friend. Maria, how wonderful to finally meet you. Elena's told me all about your nursing studies. We need more young people going into healthcare. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Eleanor had arranged for a mix of dishes, some fancy, some simple, and she steered the conversation away from wealth and toward life. She asked Mrs. Rodriguez about her treatment, asked Maria about her classes, shared stories about her own youth growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Boston. People think money solves everything, Eleanor said at one point. But it doesn't. It can't buy health or love or purpose. Those things you have to earn. Alexander's parents were notably absent, which Alexander later explained was intentional. Dad doesn't do well with people outside our social circle, he admitted. And Mom follows his lead. I'm sorry. Don't be, Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. We know who we are. We don't need everyone's approval. After dinner, Eleanor pulled Elena aside while Alexander showed Maria the library. Your mother is a remarkable woman, Eleanor said. Strong, dignified, loving. I can see where you get your backbone. She's everything to me, Elena admitted. And you to her. She watches you when you're with Alexander. She's trying to decide if he's good enough for her daughter. What do you think she decided? Eleanor smiled. I think she sees what I see, that you two challenge each other, push each other to be better. That's what love should do. Except it wasn't love, Elena wanted to say. Except she wasn't sure that was true anymore. That night, after the car had taken her family home, Elena stayed behind at Alexander's request. They sat in the garden, the mansion lit up behind them, the night air cool and comfortable. Your family's wonderful, Alexander said. They are. Thank you for being so kind to them. I wasn't being kind. I was being honest. Your mother is incredible. What she's survived, what she's built. And Maria is brilliant. She's going to make an amazing nurse. You really mean that? Why do you sound surprised? Ellen shrugged. I guess I'm still getting used to you being genuine. I could say the same about you. When we started this, you thought I was a complete waste of space. That's not true. I thought you were a partial waste of space. Alexander laughed, and the sound made Elena smile. Can I tell you something? He said, his voice growing serious. These past 2 weeks with you, getting to know you, seeing your world, having you see mine, it's been the most real I've felt in years. Maybe ever. Alexander. I know. I know this is supposed to be fake, just business. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like pretend to me. Elena's heart raced. We can't do this. Your grandmother is here for 2 more weeks. We have to maintain the facade until she makes her decision. We can't complicate things with actual feelings. Is it really complicating things? Or is it simplifying them? You don't understand. This only works because it has an end date. Because I know I can walk away when it's over and go back to my real life. What if you didn't have to? What if this could be your real life? In a mansion? Dating a billionaire? Come on, Alexander. That's not realistic. Why not? Because we're from different worlds. Because your family would never accept me, not really. Because eventually you'd realize I don't fit, and I'd be left with a broken heart and no way back to the life I had before. You really think I'd do that to you? Alexander looked hurt. I think you're a good person who's confused right now. But eventually, reality would set in. You go back to your society events and your business deals, and I'd go back to Queens and my mother's medical appointments. That's how this works. Or, Alexander said quietly, we could write a different ending. Before Elena could respond, the garden lights suddenly blazed on. Alexander's father stood at the doorway, his face a mask of cold fury. Alexander. Inside. Now. The command in his voice was absolute. Alexander stood slowly. Elena, wait here. I'll be right back. But 20 minutes later, when Alexander hadn't returned and Elena could hear raised voices from inside the mansion, she made her way to the door. Mrs. Chen intercepted her in the hallway. You should go, dear, the housekeeper said gently. Family business. What's happening? Mr. Ashford Sr. found out about your arrangement. Someone told him about the contract, the payment. He's not pleased. Elena's blood ran cold. Who told him? I don't know. But you should leave before this gets worse. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to run to Alexander, wanted to defend herself. But Mrs. Chen was right. This was Ashford family business, and she was just the hired help. She called a car service and went home, her mind racing. Who would have told Alexander's father? Who even knew about their arrangement? Her phone buzzed continuously with texts from Alexander. I'm so sorry. He's threatening to cut me off completely. I'm trying to explain. This isn't over. Don't give up on us. But Elena knew the truth. It was over. It had been foolish to think they could pull this off. Foolish to think someone like her could fit into Alexander's world. Foolish to let herself start to care. She turned off her phone and went to bed, trying to ignore the ache in her chest that felt suspiciously like heartbreak. Consequences. The next morning, Elena woke to find her phone exploded with messages. Most were from Alexander, increasingly desperate. But there was also one from Eleanor Ashford. My dear, please don't let Richard's tantrum scare you away. Come to the mansion today. We need to talk. Eleanor. Elena didn't want to go. Every instinct told her to stay away, to protect herself, to cut her losses and move on. But she owed Eleanor the truth, at least. She arrived at the mansion at noon to find it in chaos. Staff members whispered in corners. Catherine Ashford paced in the parlor. And from Richard Ashford's study came the sound of another heated argument. Mrs. Chen met Elena at the door. Eleanor's in the sunroom. She's been waiting for you. Eleanor sat in her usual chair. But there was a hardness to her expression that Elena hadn't seen before. Sit, she said, and it wasn't a request. Elena sat. My son tells me that your relationship with Alexander is a fraud. That he hired you to pretend to be his girlfriend to impress me. Is this true? Elena's throat tightened. She could lie. She could try to salvage the situation. But looking into Eleanor's eyes, she knew there was only one option. Yes, she whispered. It's true. Eleanor was silent for a long moment. Explain. So Elena did. She told Eleanor everything, the broken vase, the confrontation, Alexander's proposition, the contract, the money. She explained about her mother's medical bills, her sister's education, the desperation that had driven her to agree to something she knew was wrong. I'm sorry, Elena finished, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. You deserve better than our lies. Yes, Eleanor said coldly. I did. The disappointment in her voice was worse than any anger could have been. But, Eleanor continued, her tone softening slightly, I also understand desperation. I understand doing questionable things for the people you love. I grew up poor, Elena. I know what it's like to have limited options. That doesn't make what we did right. No, it doesn't. Eleanor stood, walking to the window. But here's what I find interesting. Alexander confessed everything to Richard last night. Did you know that? Elena shook her head. Richard demanded he end the charade immediately, threatened to disinherit him, remove him from the company, destroy his career. And do you know what Alexander said? What? He said he didn't care. He said that protecting you was more important than any of it, that he'd rather lose everything than see you hurt. Eleanor turned to face her. That doesn't sound like someone pretending to me. He was just trying to protect his investment. Elena, I've lived 84 years. I've seen real love and fake affection. I know the difference. Eleanor moved closer. Tell me honestly, are your feelings for my grandson entirely fake? Elena opened her mouth to say yes, to protect herself, to maintain the lie. But she couldn't. No, she admitted. Somewhere along the way, it became real for me. But that doesn't change the facts. We started this with a lie. His father is right to be angry. Richard is angry because he can't control this situation. He's angry because Alexander finally stood up to him. And he's angry because you represent everything he despises, someone succeeding based on character rather than pedigree. I haven't succeeded at anything. I've just made everything worse. Have you? Eleanor pulled out her phone, showing Elena a news article. This came out this morning. Elena read the headline, Ashford heir in love with staff member. A modern fairy tale or corporate scandal? The article detailed their relationship, or what the press thought was their relationship. It painted Elena as a hardworking woman who'd captured the heart of one of Manhattan's most eligible bachelors. It quoted unnamed sources praising Alexander's recent charitable donations, his kinder treatment of staff, his more thoughtful business decisions. The public loves a good romance story, Eleanor said, especially one that crosses class lines. In the past 24 hours, Ashford Industries' stock has gone up 7%. Richard is furious, but the board is delighted. I don't understand. You've made Alexander more human to people, more relatable. That's valuable in today's market. Eleanor sat back down. But more importantly, you've made him more human to himself. I've watched my grandson for years, becoming more and more like his father, cold, calculating, emotionally distant. In 2 weeks with you, I've seen him smile more, care more, be more than I have in the past decade. So what are you saying? I'm saying that I'm still angry about the deception. But I'm also grateful for what you've done for Alexander, intentionally or not. Eleanor paused. The question is, what happens now? Before Elena could answer, Alexander burst into the sunroom. Elena, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. He looked terrible, unshaven, his clothes rumpled, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Alexander, Eleanor said firmly. Sit down. He obeyed, taking a seat next to Elena but not touching her. I've been having a conversation with Elena about your arrangement, Eleanor continued. About the lies, the money, the motivation behind it all. Ren, I can explain. You don't need to. I understand why you did it. Misguided as it was, you were trying to secure the company, protect the employees. In a twisted way, it was almost noble. Then you're not cutting me off. I'm still deciding. What I want to know is this. What do you want to happen next? If I give you the trust fund, if I secure your position in the company, what will you do with Elena? Alexander looked at Elena, his expression raw with emotion. That's up to her. I know I messed up. I know I put her in an impossible position. But his voice broke. I love her. I didn't plan to. It wasn't part of the deal. But I do. Elena's heart stopped. Say that again, she whispered. I love you, Elena Rodriguez. I love your strength, your honesty, your refusal to let me get away with my nonsense. I love how you see the world, how you fight for your family, how you make me want to be better. I know I don't deserve you. I know I've given you every reason to walk away. But I'm asking, begging, for you to give me a real chance. Not fake, not for show, not for money. Just us figuring this out together. Tears streamed down Elena's face. You idiot. I know. You beautiful, frustrating, complicated idiot. You can't just say things like that and expect me not to. She broke off, laughing and crying at the same time. Not to what? Alexander asked desperately. Not to love you back. The smile that broke across Alexander's face was radiant. Eleanor cleared her throat. As touching as this is, we still have practical matters to discuss. Whatever you decide about the trust, I accept, Alexander said, not taking his eyes off Elena. But I'm stepping back from the company. What? Both Elena and Eleanor spoke in unison. I've been thinking about it all night. This whole mess made me realize that I've been living my father's dream, not mine. I don't want to run Ashford Industries. I never did. What do you want? Eleanor asked. I want to go back to school. Study architecture. Maybe start my own firm someday, something smaller, more focused on sustainable design and affordable housing. He finally looked at his grandmother. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. On the contrary, Eleanor smiled. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. I wanted to see if you had the courage to choose your own path, even if it meant giving up power and prestige. So you're not disappointed? I'm proud. More proud than I've been in years. She stood. I'm giving you the trust fund, but with conditions. You'll use part of it to start your architecture firm. Part will go into a foundation to help families like Elena's with medical expenses. And part will stay in Ashford Industries, but as a silent partner, you'll have input, but not control. And my father? Will learn to live with it. Or won't. That's his choice. Eleanor moved to the door, then paused. Elena, dear? Your contract is void. Consider this your 2 weeks' notice from the housekeeping staff. I have a different position in mind for you. What position? I'm starting a new charitable foundation, and I need someone who understands what it's like to need help. Someone with integrity and compassion to run it. Interested? Elena couldn't speak. She just nodded. Good. The salary is $120,000 a year, with full benefits. I assume that's acceptable? Yes. Thank you. Eleanor, I don't know what to say. Say you'll give my grandson a real chance. That's all the thanks I need. Eleanor left, closing the door behind her. Alone at last, Alexander and Elena looked at each other. I can't believe this is real, Elena said. It's real. Finally, completely real. Alexander reached for her hand. Elena, I know we have a lot to figure out. I know my family is complicated, and my life is messy, and there will be challenges ahead. But I want to face them with you. If you'll have me. There's one condition, Elena said. Anything. No more lies. No more pretending. Just us, honest and real, no matter how hard that gets. I can do that. I want to do that. Then yes. Yes, I'll give us a real chance. When Alexander kissed her, it felt like coming home. New beginnings. 3 months later, Elena stood in the doorway of her new office at the Eleanor Ashford Foundation, still amazed that this was her life now. The space was beautiful but functional, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, a desk that had belonged to Eleanor herself, and walls covered with photos of the families they'd already helped. Knock knock. Alexander appeared in the doorway, carrying coffee and pastries. Thought you might need fuel. Big day today. The biggest. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. Today they were announcing a new initiative, full-ride scholarships for aspiring nurses from low-income families, named after Maria Rodriguez, who was now in her final year at Columbia's nursing program. Nervous? Alexander asked, perching on the edge of her desk. Terrified. What if nobody shows up? What if this whole thing is a disaster? Then we learn and try again. That's what you taught me, remember. Failure isn't the end of the world. Elena smiled, thinking back to the past 3 months. They hadn't been easy. Alexander's father still barely spoke to them. The press had a field day with their scandal, though public opinion had mostly swung in their favor. There had been arguments, adjustments, moments of doubt. But there had also been joy. Real joy. The kind that came from building something genuine together. Alexander had enrolled in Columbia's architecture program, starting in the fall. He'd already begun volunteering with Habitat for Humanity, learning construction from the ground up. Elena had never seen him happier. My mother called this morning, Elena said. Her latest scans came back clean. Elena, that's amazing. Alexander pulled her into a hug. The doctors say the new treatment is working better than they hoped. She might actually beat this. She will. Your mother's a fighter. Like someone else I know. Elena pulled back to look at him. Thank you, by the way. For what? For this morning. For every morning. For making me coffee and remembering I like extra cream. For meeting my family for Sunday dinner, even though my tío makes fun of your Spanish. For being patient when I get overwhelmed. For being real. That's not something you need to thank me for. That's just love. The word still made Elena's heart skip. Love. Real, complicated, sometimes messy, always worth it love. I love you too, she said, pulling him down for a kiss. Get a room. Maria appeared in the doorway grinning. She'd stopped by to help set up for the press conference, bringing Mrs. Rodriguez with her. Mija, this office. Mrs. Rodriguez looked around in wonder. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mama. Without you teaching me to work hard, to stand up for myself, to never forget where I came from. You haven't forgotten. You've honored it. Mrs. Rodriguez embraced her daughter. Your father would be so proud. As Elena's eyes filled with tears, Alexander quietly stepped out to give them privacy. But through the glass wall, Elena could see him talking with Eleanor, who'd arrived early. The older woman said something that made Alexander laugh, then pulled him into a hug. This was her family now, biological and chosen. Complicated and imperfect and absolutely perfect. The press conference was a success. They announced the scholarship program, introduced the first recipients, and fielded questions about the foundation's mission. Elena spoke confidently about the importance of supporting working families, of investing in education, of recognizing that everyone deserves opportunity regardless of their starting point. Afterward, as they celebrated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, Elena found herself standing next to Richard Ashford. Alexander's father had come to the event, though he'd stayed in the background. Mr. Ashford. Elena greeted him politely. Miss Rodriguez. He studied her for a long moment. My mother tells me you're doing excellent work here. Thank you. We're trying to make a difference. You've certainly made a difference in my son's life. I'm not sure I approve of the methods, but I can't argue with the results. It wasn't exactly warm, but it was more than Richard Ashford had said to her in 3 months. He's happy, Elena said simply. Isn't that what any parent wants? What I wanted was for him to continue the Ashford legacy. Maybe he is. Just in a different way. Richard almost smiled. Perhaps. My mother certainly seems to think so. He paused. Alexander tells me you two are serious. That he intends to propose. Elena's heart jumped. Alexander hadn't said anything to her about proposals. He does he? Don't pretend to be surprised. My son looks at you the way I used to look at Catherine, before business and expectation got in the way. Richard's expression softened slightly. Don't let that happen to you. Don't let money and status and other people's opinions ruin what you have. We won't. We're determined to do things differently. Good. Because if you hurt my son, scholarship program or no scholarship program, I will make your life very difficult. Elena laughed. Fair enough. But the same goes for you. If you hurt him with impossible expectations and emotional manipulation, you'll have to answer to me. For the first time ever, Richard Ashford smiled at her. You're good for him. Welcome to the family, Elena. That evening, Alexander took Elena to the rooftop garden of his apartment building. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Manhattan sprawled before them, a city of dreams and possibilities. I have something for you, Alexander said, suddenly nervous in a way she'd never seen him. Alexander, you don't need to keep buying me things. It's not like that. Just close your eyes. Elena obeyed, smiling at the excitement in his voice. She heard rustling, then felt him take her hand. Okay, open them. He was on one knee, holding a ring box. Inside was a simple, elegant diamond ring, beautiful but not ostentatious. Perfect. Elena Rodriguez, Alexander began, his voice shaking slightly. 3 months ago, you put me in my place. You called me out for being a spoiled brat. You showed me what really matters in life. And somehow, miraculously, you fell in love with me anyway. You're not that bad, Elena said, tears already streaming down her face. You make me want to be better. You make me braver. You make everything more real, more meaningful. I can't imagine my life without you in it. He took a deep breath. Will you marry me? Yes. Elena laughed through her tears. Yes, of course yes. As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, Elena thought about the journey that had brought them here. The collision on the stairs. The fake relationship. The lies that had forced them to confront the truth. What are you thinking? Alexander asked, his forehead pressed against hers. that we have a hell of a story to tell our grandchildren. We do, don't we? Should we leave out the part about the contract? Absolutely not. That's the best part. Elena grinned. Besides, I want them to know that sometimes the most real things start from the most unlikely places. And that love can grow anywhere, even between a spoiled rich brat and a maid who put him in his place. Especially between them. As the sun set over Manhattan, Elena and Alexander stood together, no longer pretending, no longer hiding, just two people who'd found something real in a world that often valued everything but truth. The maid had put the rich brat in his place. And in doing so, she'd found her own place too, not in his world or hers, but in a new world they were building together. One based on honesty, compassion, and the understanding that true worth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with character. 1 year later, the wedding was small and intimate, held in the garden of the Ashford mansion that had been transformed for the occasion. Eleanor had insisted on hosting, and for once, Elena hadn't argued. The older woman had become a mentor, a friend, and a grandmother figure to her. Elena wore a simple white dress that she'd chosen herself. No designer labels, no excessive price tag, just something that made her feel beautiful. Maria was her maid of honor, wearing the biggest smile Elena had ever seen. Alexander waited at the altar in a simple suit, tears in his eyes as Elena walked toward him. His best man was Marcus, a classmate from his architecture program, not a childhood friend from the right family, but someone real, someone he'd chosen for himself. Richard and Catherine sat in the front row, and while they weren't exactly warm, they'd made an effort. Eleanor sat beside them, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. But Elena's eyes were on her mother, healthy and strong, walking her down the aisle. Mrs. Rodriguez had beaten cancer, had beaten the odds, and was here to see her daughter marry for love. Dearly beloved, the minister began, but Elena barely heard the words. She was too focused on Alexander, on the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. When it came time for vows, Alexander went first. Elena, you came into my life and turned it upside down in the best possible way. You challenged me, changed me, and showed me what real courage looks like. You taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the richness of our relationships, the depth of our compassion, and the authenticity of our lives. I promise to spend every day earning your trust, supporting your dreams, and loving you with everything I have. No more pretending. Just real, honest, forever love. Elena couldn't see through her tears, but she pushed forward with her own vows. Alexander, when we met, I thought I had you all figured out. I thought I knew who you were based on your bank account and your last name. But you proved me wrong in the most beautiful way. You showed me that people can change, that privilege can be used for good, and that sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the truest ones. I promise to keep challenging you, to keep being honest with you, and to build a life with you that values people over possessions and love over everything else. Thank you for seeing me, truly seeing me, and loving what you found. When they kissed, the small crowd erupted in applause. But Elena and Alexander barely noticed. They were too wrapped up in each other, in this moment, in the knowledge that they'd found something rare and precious. At the reception, Eleanor made a toast. When Alexander first told me about Elena, I thought he was making up the perfect woman. Strong, honest, real, everything he needed. Turns out he was. But then he found her anyway, or she found him, depending on how you look at it. The crowd laughed. These two young people have taught me something important in my old age. That love doesn't care about social class or tax brackets. That the best relationships challenge us to be better. And that sometimes, what starts as a mistake can become the best thing that ever happened to you. To Elena and Alexander. To Elena and Alexander, everyone echoed. Later, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Alexander whispered in Elena's ear, "Happy?" Deliriously, Elena answered, "You? More than I ever thought possible." "Good. Because you're stuck with me now. Best decision I ever made." As they swayed together, Elena thought about the journey they'd taken. From collision to confrontation to contract to genuine connection. They'd lied to everyone, including themselves, before finally finding the truth. "What are you thinking?" Alexander asked. "That I'm grateful." "For what?" "For that vase I didn't break. For your arrogance and my temper. For your grandmother's wisdom. For every mistake and mishap that led us here." "You know what the best part is?" Alexander said. "What?" "This is just the beginning. We have the rest of our lives to keep surprising each other, challenging each other, loving each other. Promise? Promise. And as they kissed again, surrounded by family and friends, by love and laughter, Elena knew that sometimes the best love stories don't follow the rules. Sometimes they start with lies and end with truth. Sometimes a maid puts a rich brat in his place, and they both find where they really belong. Tish e end. Sometimes what looks like a collision is actually destiny. Sometimes the person who challenges you most is the one you need most. And sometimes putting someone in their place means finding your own place right beside them.